Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely pumped to have you here today because we are going to unpack a historical mystery that has literally been hiding in plain sight for well over a century. We're exploring the stunning world of Central Asian textile art, but we're looking at it through a lens you've probably never considered. It's a wild story involving hidden codes, ancient beliefs, and a profound, intimate connection between art and human survival.
You know that feeling when you walk into a museum? Or maybe you see a beautiful, intricate textile draped across a sofa, and your first thought is just, wow, what a gorgeous pattern, right? But what if we need to completely rethink that? Are these really just pretty patterns, or are they ancient spells? Seriously, what if I told you that the delicate vines, the blooming flowers, and the swirling leaves you see weren't just decorative at all? What if they were actually ancient spells, stitched meticulously by hand, to guard against unseen terrors?
To really get this, we have to talk about Suzani. Suzani are these massive, breathtakingly intricate silk embroideries that come from the urban centers of Central Asia, places completely steeped in history, like Samarkand and Khujand. For generations, these pieces were a massive cornerstone of the culture, deeply tied to family and to marriage. Traditionally, these textiles were crafted specifically to decorate the marital room for newlyweds. We're talking draping the walls, covering the beds in an absolute sea of vibrant silken color.
But okay, here is where the story takes a massive turn. At first glance, yeah, a Suzani is just decor. But in reality, to the women who spent countless agonizing hours embroidering them back in the 19th century, these textiles were shields. They were meticulously crafted as literal, powerful, magical weapons. Their sole purpose was to protect the most intimate, vulnerable spaces of a family's home from forces that absolutely meant them harm.
The true secret purpose of these gorgeous textiles was rooted in something called apotropaic magic. Now, if you aren't familiar with that term, apotropaic magic is simply the ancient practice of warding off evil spirits, disease, and the demonic evil eye. Because, long before modern medicine, people fully believed that invisible, malicious spirits were the root cause of illness, infertility, just plain bad luck. And the creators of these textiles, they were using their needles and their silk thread to literally stitch protective barriers around the people they loved.
Think about it. People felt incredibly vulnerable to these demonic forces during major life transitions. The primary danger zones were weddings, childbirth, and a period they called chila, which is the first 40 days of a newborn baby's life. During these highly sensitive, chaotic times, people believed they were just utterly exposed to spiritual attacks. They needed magical protection around the clock. And that is exactly why a Suzani, heavily loaded with protective spells, was placed directly over the bridal bed or literally wrapped around a new mother.
Decoding the stitches. Hidden weapons.
Okay, let's dive into this and methodically break down exactly how these women hid their magic in plain sight. They disguised their weapons as completely harmless, stylized plant life. It's absolutely brilliant. Look at how this secret language works. What looks like a sweeping, graceful vine or a delicate little leaf is actually cordiamge, a kitchen knife, stitched right in there to guard women against evil. What looks like a cross-shaped flower, actually chorchirag, a four-wick oil lamp, bringing the protective magic of fire into the fabric. And that elongated teardrop shape, that's column 4, a hot red pepper, meant to literally frighten off demons with its harsh sting.
And to prove just how deeply this magic was baked into their daily lives, ethnographers working in the region actually documented this phenomenon happening in real time. There's this one story from a researcher who was leaving a local woman's house late at night. The host was genuinely terrified that evil spirits might attack her guest out in the dark, so she told her to repeatedly mutter the words "Kordiash, Kordiash, Kordiash" as she walked. That is the spoken incantation for kitchen knife. It completely ties the spoken magic of the region directly to the stitch magic hanging on their walls.
When you really think about the Kordiash, you have to appreciate the incredible contrast at play here. On one hand, you have the delicate, luxurious, soft nature of brightly colored silk, but on the other hand, you have the harsh, heavy, utilitarian reality of a sharp kitchen knife used to hack meat. By stylizing this heavy blade into a totally harmless-looking leaf, these women were able to weave a formidable weapon into their bedroom decor without raising a single eyebrow.
Nature as a shield. So, knives and lamps weren't their only defenses. The weavers also called upon the protective powers of the natural world. They took the powerful traits of revered animals and wove them right into those seemingly innocent vines. If you know what to look for, it's like a giant puzzle. There is an entire menagerie of animal magic hidden in the silk. You'll find Kutzkorak, stylized ram's horns designed specifically to catch and neutralize the evil eye. You'll see Pepoki Shatur, the footprint of the powerful, revered camel, abstracted into these massive, beautiful circular rosettes.
You'll even find highly abstracted bird motifs, sometimes completely stripped of their heads and tails, just to blend in with the leaves, acting as hidden spiritual guardians.
Now, just like spoken language, different cities had their own distinct dialects of the secret visual language. Take the Samarkand style, for instance. It was famous for its dark, cold colors, deep purples, dark greens, and it was intensely heavy with hidden amulets, like the knives and lamps we talked about. Khujand, on the other hand, had a totally different vibe. They were legendary for their specific use of the paipoki chatur, featuring those massive, rhythmic, camel-tracked rosettes spread boldly across the entire textile.
From magic to market. But, as with all great traditions, the world outside eventually came knocking. As we move into the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this massive shift happens, and you can trace the evolution perfectly. In the mid-19th century, these textiles were deeply symbolic, homemade spells crafted by family for family. But hit the 1880s and capitalism has firmly entered Central Asia. Suddenly, boom, there's a market for these beautiful textiles. So as we push into the 20th century, creating a Suzani shifts from being this deeply personal family tradition to just becoming a commodity. They're being produced by professional embroiders for profit. The whole intention behind the needle changed.
And here's what's wild. You can physically see this shift in purpose right in the fabric itself. In the magical era, the embroideries mostly used white cotton backgrounds to really highlight those carefully hidden amulet shapes. But once we hit the commercial era, the backgrounds went dark. The designs became purely decorative. They were meant to look striking and flashy to a buyer in a market, rather than, protecting a newborn baby from a demon. And tucked away in the ethnographer's research is this incredibly fascinating, humanizing detail about how this transition actually felt on the ground. Because it wasn't just economics. It was a full-blown generational clash. It was literally a teenage rebellion played out in thread.
Let me paint the picture for you. In the older, magical tradition, the grandmothers absolutely insisted that the leafy borders of the Suzani had to be stitched in a specific dark green thread. Otherwise, the protective magic just wouldn't work. But the younger generation of women, they wanted to use black thread, because black was the bold, trendy new style in the markets. The shift from green to black wasn't just some harmless fashion choice. It was a literal, physical rejection of their grandmother's superstitions by the youth.
So you can see where this is going. The crucial point here is that as the older generation passed away, and as these embroideries were increasingly made for total strangers in the marketplace rather than for their own daughters and sons, the secret language just died. The true meaning of the original protective stitches, the hidden knives, the lamps, the ram's horns, was completely lost to time. The women stitching the patterns no longer even knew they were stitching spells.
Instead, they started inventing completely new commercial motifs to appeal to the modern buyer. Suddenly, you've got patterns that look like tea samovars, steaming trains, ornate wooden chests, and these big, decorative, abundant fruits. These new motifs, they didn't ward off evil at all. They were just designed to flex material wealth, modernity, and a life of abundance.
And the way the textiles were actually used inside the home changed completely too. By the 20th century in Khujand, a Suzani was no longer kept on the wall for months and months as this active, protective barrier. Nope. Instead, it hung in the groom's room for a mere 3 days during the wedding festivities, and then folded up and packed away in a chest. 3 days! And it completely lost its long-term, magical, protective power.
The ethnographers who studied these incredible pieces really hit the nail on the head. They summarized it perfectly. The archaic basis of the embroideries was outlived, yielding to a new style and new subjects. It's tragic, for sure, but it's an inevitable consequence of commercialization. An ancient, deeply intimate language of protection ultimately had to give way to the demands of commerce and changing times.
Which brings us to the final thought I want to leave you with today. The story of the Suzani proves that the objects we surround ourselves with, the everyday things in our homes, they often hold histories far deeper than just their aesthetics. So next time you admire a beautiful antique pattern, whether it's on a rug, a piece of clothing, maybe a carving, I want you to look a little closer. Ask yourself, what forgotten spells might be hiding right there in plain sight? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your eyes open, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.